Music Industry Podcast, and I'm David Angeweeb. Let's dig in.
Today I'm chatting with music mogul Jason Davis. How are you today, Jason?
I am well. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thanks so much for coming on the show. So I'm struck by how our stories have certain parallels to them. I've either been in the Christian community or orbiting it my whole life. I struggled with self-confidence as a youth. I realized that music was what I wanted to do when I was 15 because it brought the attention I desperately wanted. I wrote songs and played in bands. I didn't go on to sell a lot of albums or write hit song like you did, but gradually I have been finding my path in the music business. So talk about your early years. What was that like?
Growing up is just always music for me. From the moment I could walk and the moment I could talk, I was begging my parents for a plastic drum set as a kid, and used to carry around a little plastic Mickey Mouse guitar, with the nylon strings on it from Disney World, and would sit with the little plastic guitar at the kitchen table when we'd eat dinner as a little boy. And so I probably wrote my first song with an old friend that lived across the street from me when I'm thinking maybe 6 years old. Mm-hmm. And we even tried to form a band when we were, I think, 8 or 9. And so it was just always there. And 13, it started becoming a little more serious. Started writing songs a lot for my first band at 13. And then at 16, I started writing songs totally on my own, just with an acoustic guitar. And really just fell head over heels for songwriting. Mm-hmm. And never thought that this is what I would do for a living or a career, but I couldn't stop doing it. So it was always something I did from the moment I was, 13, but really 16 seriously, until I landed my first song on a record when I was 23. And I'd probably write for those 8 years. I probably wrote maybe 30 to 40 songs a year, and would record, my favorite 1 to 4 songs, I would say, a year. And, it was just this intense passion for songwriting and what it did for me, how it relieved stress for me. It was a way for me to get out my feelings. I found it helpful to communicate to others. And it was really a very therapeutic thing. And I just couldn't stop doing it. And that's what really, that passion and not being able to stop is what led me, for the doors to open to the music industry eventually.
I think that's almost like a commonality among the people that have found a degree of success in the music industry. I think I've heard Josh Ramsey from Marianas Trench say the same thing. He couldn't imagine doing anything else. And if you want to make it in the music industry, that's how you should approach it. If you can't imagine doing something else, then maybe your strengths lie elsewhere.
Yeah, it was really interesting. I love giving people guidance, advice. I love giving back. But I was watching 2 different interviews from artists that I grew up with as a kid. And both of these interviews with both of these artists said the same exact thing to a question. And it really struck me. And I saw these interviews probably a month apart from each other. And one of the interviews was with, and they were current interviews. Probably this is a few years ago. And one of the interviews was with the lead singer, Paul Stanley, of the band Kiss. Mm-hmm. And that was actually the very first group I ever saw in my life. I remember being a very little boy watching TV and just seeing like Kiss on television, like blowing fire out of their mouths. And I was like, what the heck is that? And so I was listening to this interview, and Gene Simmons is asked, what advice would you give to an aspiring artist or an artist that's coming up in the music industry? And his response was, I don't give people advice. He said, because if you can't stop doing it, then you'll eventually be in the music industry. And if you can stop doing it, you should go get another job. And then I was watching about a month later an interview with probably my favorite, or I'd say one of my top favorite childhood bands, Def Leppard.
Wow.
And the lead singer Joe Elliott gave the exact same response to that question in a separate interview, and just said, my advice is if you can't imagine yourself doing anything else in the world, then you'll succeed. And that's been my case as well. I tried to do this. Kind of interesting. I was in a dysfunctional home growing up, and my parents got divorced, and my parents were awesome. They did the best they could. And they did a good job, but they ended up getting divorced, and I ended up moving out on my own at 18 years old. And I spent, I would say 5 years. I was still writing songs during this period, but I spent 5 years trying to become my dad, or trying to follow his path. And so I got jobs, and I tried to climb the ladder in these jobs, and had a couple different jobs over those 5 years. And I would just, after 2.5 to 3 years, I would just find myself totally burnt out and not really able to give my heart to the job anymore.
Yeah.
And at 23, it was when I realized that I was born to do this. This is part of God's plan for me. And I cannot do anything but this. And so
I do relate to that, and on a slightly different level, because my dad passed away when I was 14. So
Wow.
or 13 actually. So in the ensuing years, I found myself kind of picking up a lot of things that I think he would have liked me to pick up, such as playing an instrument or learning how to use a computer and do emails and create websites and things like that. And that's kind of some of the things he was doing in his spare time, not even necessarily as a profession. And yeah, I think it's interesting, right? It's almost ingrained in us to want to please others.
Yeah. Especially when it's our dad.
Yeah, that's huge. Everybody wants their parents to be proud, for sure.
Yes, for sure.
So getting back to your story, how did things progress from there? You wrote a hit song. You ended up working with a lot of amazing artists. What happened?
When I landed that first song on a record, I just saw that the door had cracked open to a dream. It was to a dream that I didn't even know I could dream. And it was so mind blowing to me. And I realized that I tried to do these other jobs. I got burnt out. That doesn't work. And this door just cracked open. And I have the world basically telling me that I wrote a hit song in my bedroom. And this is all I've ever been passionate about. And I was like, man, I have to attack this. I don't know how long the door stays open for. And I never want to go backwards. So I approached the music industry with a very, very, very intense, and a lot of intensity. And I started working, I went to my parents 21 years ago, a little over 21 years ago, and asked them if I could quit my job and move back in with my dad. And he extremely reluctantly, which I understand, let me do that. And I'd wake up every day at 5:30 or 6 in the morning and work until midnight. And I did that literally probably 6-7 days a week for years and years and years and years. And just every day it was like, okay, what can I accomplish today? And I'd spend a lot of time deep in thought. I'd spend a lot of time strategizing, a lot of time just thinking deeply upon questions like how do you grow? How do you succeed? I've been willing to move for this. I spent my first 5 years in New York City, and then, I started realizing that I had a lot of relationships in New York City, and I would hear about all these people that work for record labels in Los Angeles, and I knew all the people that worked for record labels in New York City, but I didn't know anyone that worked in Los Angeles. And I thought to myself, if I'm really going to be good at what I do, and there's a whole community that I don't even know. And 50% of the business, or 33% of the business, because in Nashville, 33% of the business is in Los Angeles. I need to be there. And so I made a decision to move across the country. And it was very, very easy to get inroads in Los Angeles because I used all my relationships that I had in New York to introduce me to people at labels in Los Angeles. So, I mean, instantly I had immediate friends at record labels in Los Angeles when I moved there. But, and now I live in Nashville, and I've been coming to Nashville on and off for 19 years. So I've been willing to move. I've been willing to spend my own money. I mean, I don't know how much money I've spent, pursuing and growing this, my career or my relationships, but it's been, if I added it all up, it would probably be a very shocking number, how large it would be. And I've just always been willing to do anything to grow, to learn, to network, to get to a new relationship, to honor the relationships I have. I've always done everything I can to keep my word. If I owe somebody $1, they don't have to ask me for it. They don't have to chase me for it. I just always try to do whatever I say I'm going to do. And that's just led me to have a lot of relationships over the years. And I know it's a very broad answer, but those are kind of the basics of how it grew.
I mean, with that type of work ethic, it's really no mystery why you're successful. But I think that's an amazing mindset and something my audience will love to hear as well. I mean, I guess if I had go ahead.
And I'm sorry, just one thing to add too that just popped in my head. I've been doing this for 21 years, mm-hmm. and I've had my large share of failure, and I don't think anyone in life has done something for 21 years that hasn't made mistakes or hasn't had some things that they wish they could get back or get some do-overs. But I have had a lot of success, and 21 years in, this week, just looking at the last couple of days of my week, Monday, I worked 17 hours straight, no break, not even a food break. I mean, no break at all, 17 hours straight. Yesterday, I worked 11 hours and, was at it, this morning and we'll be at it probably until this evening. And I still have the energy for it. And I still feel just as passionate about what I'm doing. And just as excited about what I'm doing as the first day the door cracked open to me in the music industry. And that was 21 years ago. So, it for me, I don't see how anyone could do this if the fuel source is not passion. So.
Right. I think if I had one question is just how do you do that without burning out? Is it really just pursuing something you love that much?
What I usually do, and I try to do, is I usually work very hard for 6 months straight. Mm-hmm. And I work pretty intensely for 6 months straight. I do at this point, I do my best to try to take weekends off or not work a lot on the weekends. So usually what I do is I do Monday through Friday, like crazy schedule, nonstop, and try to rest up, and relax and spend time with my wife, on weekends. And then usually every 6 to 8 months or 6 to 9 months, like we'll kind of go on a trip somewhere just to, recalibrate, get out of the area. And that generally refreshes me. And so that's how I've done it.
Got it. That makes sense. And getting back once more to your story, and this is what I've been driving for, because I don't leave, open ends like this alone. So you had it all. You were working with well-known artists, had all the money you ever wanted, accomplished more than you thought possible, but you were planning to end your life. Why?
Yeah, so I was living, this is probably a little over 11 years ago. I was living in Los Angeles. I would always think about, dream about kind of hitting it bigger, or making a lot of money, and yeah, and it's not even like I had this great plan or anything. I moved to Los Angeles, and just kind of things started falling into place, and it was just all of a sudden there was like this explosion of success and money. And I wasn't grounded spiritually, wasn't grounded as a person, and all that money that I was making back then was not good for me because I was not grounded. And I grew up, I didn't know God at that point in my life. I found God about 11 years ago. But I was living in Los Angeles, and I had grown up not really fully aware, but deep down inside, I had this belief that the only way I could get love, the only way that anybody would ever love me or accept me, or want me for real in their life, would be if I had success. And, you could tell somebody that you're successful, but how do they know? Maybe they don't believe you. So material objects became a way for me. I felt unbelievably drawn when I lived in Los Angeles to materialism. And I wanted the nicest possible car that you could buy. I wanted the nicest house you could have. I wanted life to be as big and grand looking. I wanted to have the most expensive watch you could put on your wrist. And God was so mind-blowing because when I didn't even know him, he allowed me to have all those things. So that I would eventually get to the end of all that and realize that it did not, like, my watch did not actually love me. And nobody that saw my watch that was attracted to my watch, those people were also searching for the wrong things in life and weren't capable of loving me, and I wasn't capable of loving anyone. And so I got to a point living in Los Angeles where I had all this, tons and tons of material possessions. And when you build a life like that for yourself, you have to be able to maintain it. And maintaining it is extremely stressful. And I was also, because I was so empty inside and searching for love, I just was, I was just not looking back. From a character perspective, I always came off nice to people, but deep down inside in my thoughts and heart, from a character perspective, I had a lot of character issues. I was very self-centered. I wasn't always, honest or straightforward with people in business, and sadly. And I got to a point where I realized, like, I don't like who I am. And there was a few things about myself that I was kind of almost like disgusted over. And it's like, how did I get here? I'm pretty gross. I'm so self-centered. And I'm under this unbelievable financial pressure. And I've worked for so many years and killed myself to get to this position. And now that I finally have it all, I feel like I actually have nothing. I mean, I feel like I literally am I have zero in my whole life. Like, nothing I have means anything. But now I'm in a position where I have to maintain it. And if I don't maintain it, my life will be ruined. And so I just got to a point where I felt cornered. I felt very empty. I felt very depressed and alone. And I felt like I didn't really have anybody in my life that cared or loved me. And everybody that was around me was kind of around me because, you got free dinners, and I was kind of exciting to be around because we'd get in a really nice car. And, or like what they could get from me in business, or, because maybe they could get a job from me, or, and so I checked myself into a hotel room in Los Angeles. I didn't tell anybody where I was, and I was 100% committed to killing myself. And through a series of events, which started in that hotel room, I found Jesus and actually had a vision of Jesus. And it was crazy because I was born and raised Jewish. Mom and dad are Jewish. And I didn't really believe in Jesus. I didn't really know about Jesus. And I had never read the Bible in my life. I'd never really been to church. But here I was having this vision as clear as me talking to you right now on the phone. And I instantly had this vision, and I instantly knew it was Jesus. And I got radically saved in that moment. And I went out and I bought a Bible for the first time in my life, and I started reading it every night. And I would find myself some nights literally crying my eyes out for 30 minutes, just reading the scriptures and reading what it was saying and how impactful it was. And just out loud for the first time in my life in my bedroom alone, just at nighttime, with candle lit, reading the Bible, just apologizing to God for so many things I had done wrong since my childhood. And, people that I hurt, that I really didn't mean to, but I was so dysfunctional and such a wreck as a person. Like, I just didn't even know what I was doing half the time and hurting people. And I really felt that God was forgiving me and like saying, I'm going to give you a second chance. And I'm going to give you a clean slate. And that was so overwhelming to me. And I can't really say that anybody up to that point in my life had given me much of a second chance, but here God was. And I started learning, what God said versus what all my friends or family growing up said. And what God said in the Bible seemed to be pretty different from what I learned from my friends and family. And a lot of the things that I had followed were the things that got me into trouble and caused me to make poor choices. And so I started following what God said in the Bible, and all of a sudden my life started turning around. And all of a sudden, the same type of person that might not have liked me in the past, all of a sudden would write me letters of appreciation or send me a card saying that I changed their life. And I was like, I'm the same guy. It's just the only thing that happened was I started reading the Bible and applying it. And my heart started changing where I wanted to like really love people and serve people and care about people and fight for people, and just be a blessing to people's lives, and I got saved when I was 33 years old. So I had 33 years of mistakes and did some good things along the way, but mistakes and things that I wish I could do over. And I felt like, man, I don't have, like, potentially half my life is over. And I want the next half of my life to be about just radically trying to love people and serve people and care about them. And obviously I don't do it perfect every day. But that's the desire of my heart, and where did that desire come from? It's just come from, knowing God. And so.
Thank you for sharing that. That's incredible.
Sure.
And this isn't to dilute what you've said at all. But sometimes I share with people, if you want to know who your true friends are, start a business, because the people who said, right? The people who said who would buy, they don't buy. People who said who support, don't support. And then when you suddenly have all this money and all this stuff coming in, suddenly they want to be your friend.
And you realize, who your friends are when 21 years in business, I've seen a lot, and there's been quite a few people that I thought were really dear friends of mine that stole a lot from me, and were very deceptive to me, and people that I cared deeply about. And it's amazing when you look at the world. I mean, people, like families, literally over inheritance money will never talk to each other again. Like brothers and sisters will never talk to each other again.
Yeah.
People literally will kill people over money. Half the time, and I don't watch a lot of TV at all, but half the time you turn on TV and you see these crime mysteries on TV. It's like, a husband kills a wife for the insurance policy. I mean, it's insane.
Yeah.
And the depths of where evil can go is crazy. But it is amazing in business how you just see so many people when it comes to a scale, and you've got a person on the left scale and money on the right scale. I mean, most people on this earth, thank God, not all, but most people at the end of the day are going to take the money off the scale and throw the person under the bus if push comes to shove. And it's been a real learning experience in these years in business. But, I also think you get to a point where you've been through enough of that in business that you get to the point where you start living your life a little bit more open-handed. Because, if you've been stolen from in the past or taken advantage of the past, you have two choices: to become either less trusting of people or just more open with people and be like, hey, if they're going to steal something from me, like, God will work that out with them, and maybe they needed it more than I did. And so I'm actually very thankful for any experience I've had in the past that was heartbreaking, or, where people deceive me or hurt me, because I've learned from it, and miraculously it's caused me to love people even more. And so.
Yeah. And to your point about like the media and the crazy things that happen there's that famous quote, life imitates art far more than art imitates life. I feel like that's never been more true. Life definitely imitates art, and we are far more suggestible as human beings than I think a lot of people realize. We tend to act out the things we see.
Yeah. Yeah. And I also think, it's very easy for us as people to justify wrong behavior. I've met people in business that are like, you know what? I don't like this person, or I don't like my boss, or I'm angry with this person. And half the time the other person doesn't even know. And they'll justify like stealing something from them or lying to them or deceiving them. And half the time the person is upset over something or angry over something that's a theory that they created, that was created in their own head. And sometimes the stuff that they're upset about or angry about isn't even like real.
Yeah.
And it's all created to justify, an action that they're going to take against the person. And so that's something I've seen quite a bit throughout my years in business. And it's definitely business, as you know, is extremely rewarding. Yes. And but that's definitely one of the disadvantages. So.
Well, it's a very good thing to be aware of. And your story highlights the notion that a successful career doesn't necessarily make you feel fulfilled or happy. So for those looking to achieve big things in their music career or business, what advice do you have?
That is such a great question. Phenomenal question. To me, the success or the journey is obviously exciting. It's obviously fun, but it's short-lived. I mean, you win an award for something, and 3 years later it's a piece of plastic collecting dust on your mantle, and it doesn't really mean anything to you other than, it's good that I won that back then, and nobody could ever take that away from me kind of thing. But the tears in your eyes that you had when you won it, you don't feel that when you look at the piece of plastic or the you know, the medal award, you know, years later. So for me, what I've learned, and I think this is so important, and this has been massive for me, and I do feel like God showed this to me, but everything is about understanding what is your purpose, like what is your mission, and being reminded and surrounding yourself with people that remind you of that mission or that purpose or that vision that you have, regularly, and always going back to why am I doing this? And if it's and I think like anything else in life, if it's for you, if your mission or your purpose is for you, if it's for you to make a lot of money, if it's for you to have any kind of power, if it's for you to get any kind of attention or notoriety, God is not going to bless that. He'll let you have successes, but you're not going to experience his gifts, which are joy and peace. And joy and peace will elude you, and you'll never be satisfied, and you'll step over people and hurt people to get what you want. You'll lie and cheat to get what you want, and you will end up very unhappy at some point. It could take 10 years, it could take 20 years, but you're not going to be happy with that journey. And for me, my focus and my vision, my passion, the North Star for me is that God planted the passion seed for music in an artist or a singer or a songwriter or a producer or whatever. God planted that passion seed in them. So when I encounter that person, I'm aware that this is actually from God. God has allowed me to be sitting in front of them. God has blessed me with a lot of knowledge, a lot of relationships, and a lot of know-how. And it is my duty before God on this earth to serve that person, and that person to me is a son or a daughter of God. Serve that person, love that person well, care about that person, do everything I can to help that person. Because if that seed matures and blossoms and becomes fully sophisticated, what it will do is show people through somebody's voice or through somebody's songs a small taste or a small glimpse, just touching the garments of how mind-blowing the music in heaven is. And that touch of heaven, that taste of heaven that's in the best song or in the best singer is the power that's actually in music. And that's what has the ability to make somebody who's listening to a song literally pull a gun out of their mouth and not kill themselves. It's the power that makes the girl that was, raped by a family member who's been cutting herself for 4 to 5 years for the first time in her life, she falls in love with an artist or falls in love with a song or an album. And for the first time in 4 or 5 years, she puts the razor blade down and never cuts herself again. And, the teenager that's drowning in an ocean of dysfunction, living in a rough home, who has nobody to talk to. It's not cool to talk to your friends. It's not cool if you're a guy to talk to another girl and about what you're going through, and you're not going to go to your teachers or an adult. So many teenagers are just suffering, and they're drowning in a sea of depression or despair. And a music artist or an unbelievable album or an unbelievable singer could end up being a lifeline in the ocean where that teenager is drowning, for them to hold on to and them not to end their life. and or to make it through whatever they're going through. And it's just so huge. It's so massive, and it's so powerful, and it's such a large responsibility. And so to me, I feel like I'm on a mission to do the best that I possibly can, to try to be a part of music, or try to help music along, or try to make music that is so unbelievable, where the songs are so unbelievable and the singer is so seasoned and unbelievable, where the song has a chance to save lives. And I've been on the other side of it, where I've seen, hit songs that I've been a part of save lives, and seeing the messages that come in, and the letters that come in to the artist, and the private Facebook messages that come in. It's just, and I save a lot of those messages, literally in my phone, I take screenshots, and I've got like all kinds of folders of screenshots of people where they said like the song changed their life or saved their life, or, hey, our son didn't, this song saved our son's life, from a parent or something like that. So, and I save those to remind me of like when I'm going, when a day's rough, or, I've got a lot on my plate. I save those to bring me back to the North Star of why am I doing it. And I think if you are doing it for other people, you'll always be satisfied regardless of the result.
Oh, it's so true. Even just listening to music as a teenager, feeling powerful, feeling empowered versus kind of feeling left out or not validated, like you've talked about. So I totally get that.
Yeah.
And you've kind of mentioned this already, but there's a quote in your bio that I really love. It says, "I love helping people with a dream that God has planted in them. My career is about me pouring into others, loving others, caring, and fighting for others." I mean, there simply aren't enough people like that in the world. It seems like everyone is trying to get their own thing going without consideration for the vision and dreams of others. And even if not for that, they're missing potential collaboration and cross-promotion opportunities because of it. Talk about the importance of helping others.
I think there's so many people in the music industry that are either around the outer skirts of the inner circle, or are in the inner circle of the music industry that are extremely self-centered. And I'm pretty confident that they're not aware of it, and don't mean to be. But it's very rare that I see somebody putting others first. And I've always found that those tend to be the people that have the most even-keeled careers. And they may not always be the most successful person, but they have a lot of success, and the success tends to maintain. But I do feel there are very, very few people like that in the music industry, for sure. But thank God, I'm very thankful that I have found some of those people. And I do work with some people that are real deal gifts from heaven, like just total gems. So, and that was not easy to find. I mean, that took probably well over a decade on its own. So,
On a related note, you're the president of Care for Kids, which helps poor children across the world in need of food, clothes, and comfort. Talk about the importance of giving back.
To me, most of what I do, I think, when you work with artists, and a lot of times when you work with artists, you're working with people younger than you. I'm always working with people younger than me now, but I think, almost everything is about giving back and pouring into people. And, when you're connected with God and you have the right purpose and mission, you do get poured into back by people. People do express thanks, and you probably don't hear it tons from people, but when you're on mission and you know why you're doing what you're doing, you don't need or feel the desire, that people give it back to you. You have a lot to pour out. the care for kids is we deal with organizations that work in third world countries that feed, we're talking about, these are families that are literally making under $30 a month and, borderline starving to death. And if they get sick, they don't have the money to get any kind of medicine and will die. Don't have access to clean water. Sometimes they have to walk 2.5 to 3 miles just to get water, and then have to walk back. And sometimes the kids actually have to go in the parents' place every once in a while. And there's tons of kids in third world countries that are kidnapped on those water journeys and sold into sex trafficking and sex slavery. So I work with artists and speakers that are willing to talk about these kids from their platform, whether it's at a concert or at a speaking event, and encourage people to, help sponsor, a family or a child in another country. And so that's the basics of what that is.
Now, this is a little unusual, but I'd like to ask your advice on something, if you'd humor me. Is that okay?
Sure.
All right. So I've been having some conversations with some of my collaborators about putting together an alternative Christian compilation, sending out to the seeker-friendly community. I'm going to be responsible for marketing it. So what tips would you have for me to make that a success?
Man, that's a big question.
It is.
So are you talking about maybe a group like a Switchfoot where it's not overtly Christian kind of thing?
Yeah, exactly. It's not like a JPM, Jesus Per Minute kind of music. So,
well, I think the most important thing with something like that is either, two fronts to be using social media. And then also, for those artists to be touring in some capacity, selling that product. And, artists at that, in that space, there's a lot of artists playing, that are like that are playing college circuits. Colleges are huge for that kind of music. And there's a lot of artists out there that I personally know and I've led to deals that play, tons of shows a year, and all they're doing for the most part is playing colleges. And the colleges, will pay out pretty well. Just that seems to be a really good genre for people that are in their college years. Mm-hmm. And I've seen a lot of artists have success with, just getting into a college circuit and playing shows, selling CDs, and then, of course, just, having, working it on all different social media platforms.
Those are some great tips. It's some things that maybe would not have occurred to me. So I'm going to be looking into the college market for sure.
Awesome.
And how do you become an owner and partner in multiple companies? What sort of commitment is required? I think you sort of hinted at that. And is it stressful?
It can be overwhelming sometimes. I definitely have days where I feel there's a lot on my plate. And because I'm shifting throughout my day between so many different ideas or thoughts, because each company does something totally different. So, 1 minute I'm in a text exchange or scheduling something or in a conversation with somebody about, a booking company and booking a tour. And then the next minute I'm talking to somebody about an artist I manage, and it's a totally different question. It's a totally different topic. And that's usually happening. Sometimes during the day I'm juggling two different ideas at the same time as far as scheduling things on my calendar, or and I have quite a decent team around me that is there to help. I couldn't do it unless I had great partners. And so, over 21 years, I am very entrepreneurial. So I've always looked for people that blow me away in business, or I think are special in business, or have accomplished, very, very big things in business where maybe I have something to bring to the table that they don't have, and vice versa. And always, suggested to those people over the years, like, let's partner up, let's form something. And I always look for opportunities that I'm not going to be the one to carry all of the weight. So any partnership I've formed or business I've started, it's always been where I can see before this thing is formed that I have the pieces in place to take this to a whole nother level. But I have the people that are already carrying the weight of what they're doing, and I have a vision for how I could come in and enhance what they're doing and just add to it. But I know it's, going into that business, it's not going to require, 40 hours of my week. It might require, 5 hours of my week. And so I've always looked for opportunities like that. And a lot of what I've formed is just out of a need for areas that I see artists not being served well in the industry, or areas that I felt like maybe I could serve an artist better in this area. And then I found somebody that was an expert at it. And, we teamed up and formed something to, with my intention of like, okay, this could be used to better serve who I actually work with, if that makes sense.
That's great. That's awesome. I'm going to throw out a couple of my canned questions because I think we can draw conclusions about your biggest struggles and biggest victories at this point.
Sure.
But are there any books that have inspired and helped you on your journey?
I wish I read more. I need to read more. I love reading. I just don't have tons of time.
Yeah, of course.
But I would say that a book that has stuck with me, that I've never been able to shake the idea of, and it's really nothing that was in the book. It's just really the title of the book and the way the book hit me. But T.D. Jakes, the huge pastor in Texas, he put out a book that's called, I'm pretty sure it's called Reposition Yourself. And it's all about, if you want to get to another level and everybody around you is kind of looking at you as a leader, then you've maxed out your level because everyone's looking up to you. And so, he explains, like, you need to reposition yourself and surround yourself with people that you're actually looking up to, that you think are smarter than you, better than you at things. And I've really applied that to my life, and I'm always searching for people that I think are more talented than me or smarter than me. But yeah, so that's probably the book that hit me the hardest.
Yeah, and that title is Reposition Yourself, Living Life Without Limits by T.D. Jakes. Awesome.
Yes.
This has been a fantastic conversation. Thank you so much for your time and generosity. Is there anything else I should have asked?
No, not that I could think of, and I really appreciate being on. And I thank you for your time as well.
All right. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening. Make sure to go to musicentrepreneur.hq.com for show notes and other goodies, and leave us a review in iTunes to help us spread the word.